Sonali has a piece I wanted to talk to her about because it's I would characterize it as positively focused regarding the struggle ahead. But she'll tell us more. First of all, Sonali, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Richard. Always a pleasure to be on with you.
And same here. And your piece is 7 Ways to Rise Up Against Trumpism 2.0. So let's start with this. Why did you think we needed a listing of ways to rise up, and rising up is a phrase you use, but uh, why did we need this spelled out for us?
I think there's just massive overwhelm, right? We saw this coming, many of us. Millions of us who chose not to vote for Trump saw this coming. We knew that he was going to overwhelm us. He promised right from the start that on day one, in fact, he used terms like on day one, I'll be a dictator just for the first day, and then I'll, be a president. He promised us that he was going to overwhelm us and come into office with a sweeping agenda and remake government. And that is precisely what he has done. I mean, he's maybe got even further than some of us expected in the speed, if not the ferocity, of his actions. And he has, I think just really, really overwhelmed us. And I think that's the point with his Department of Government Efficiency, with his assaults on the Constitution, multiple assaults on the Constitution, right? The attack on birthright citizenship, freezing congressionally mandated funds, which is not the purview of the president. He's the kind of president who has made it very clear that he will um, first do what he wants to do and then see if anyone tries to stop him rather than asking permission. Biden, of course, in contrast, was the kind of president who felt like he needed permission for everything, especially if it was um, something that the left wanted, with the exception of, things like funding genocide, in which case he
Right.
didn't ask for permission. But the overwhelm is the point, loading us up so much that we don't know where to start, that we feel so depressed. We're kind of tuning out. And I have been there. You might have been there. Many of your viewers might be there. That for the past month, it has been, I mean, it's been just about a month since he was inaugurated, and the overwhelm is the point. And therefore, the idea was let's start identifying, clarifying, expressing, and articulating the ways in which people are responding, because there are many, many, many responses and pushbacks against Trump. And unless we see what those are, we can't figure out how to plug in, because plug in we must.
Yes,
None of us can afford to step away from this fight.
no, and I think you're exactly right. And that's the reason why I asked the question, because it's been a tsunami. And I think even those of us who expected it, for one thing, we didn't expect the extent of at least I didn't, of Elon Musk's participation as a kind of co president. So you have the wealthiest person in the world collaborating with arguably the most powerful elected leader in the world to go way beyond any mandate they were given. And I think you're right. I think to a certain extent the goal was shock and awe, right? To paralyze us. So you've identified in response 7 areas, of course, by no means mutually exclusive nor excluding others, but 7 key areas that I like for a couple reasons. One of which is life affirming. I read them and I thought, among other things, they're affirming the importance of human experience and human life. But let's go through them and let people draw their own conclusions. Let's take them in order. Let's start with immigrant rights. Why is this an important issue right now?
It's important because Trump has laid out that it's important. Immigration is one of my favorite issues as well, just because I'm an immigrant. And for me, it's so clear, having been personally on the side of and been among those people who have been and in that community that has been demonized and blamed for all manner of things that the country struggles with. Trump made very clear, Elon Musk has made very clear in the past year and even longer of his latest campaign that immigrants are the problem that America faces, even though, of course, we know over and over again it's billionaires, it's the capitalist agenda. And immigrants are, in fact, such an important part of the lifeblood of this country. And so I thought it would be really important to tackle immigration. And one part, which I didn't actually mention in the piece, is that Trump's anti-immigrant raids are not going as planned. In the first couple of weeks, the ICE arrested and deported, or arrested rather, a larger number, or the rate of arrest was higher than average. After that, it's gone down, and they've kind of either run out of people to like capture because they inflated the problem so much, but it really isn't as big a problem as they were claiming, or they simply have not been able to go into many of the cities where immigrants run and just violate people's rights. I also suspect that a lot of it has to do with the fact that people are so prepared now. Immigrant rights organizations have been quietly carrying out know your rights trainings throughout the country. And so this is the big thing that I point out. One of the big ones has been the National Day Labor Organizing Network, whose work I've been following. They've been doing know your rights trainings in preparation for Trump coming in, and then smaller immigrant rights groups in small cities. Like I pointed out, just found a couple. Stockton, California has one called EMAC, Empowering Marginalized Asian Communities. In Southern California, the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. And they're using social media. They're using these trainings to get people to understand that if ICE agents come knocking on your door, you don't have to let them in. You don't have to give them your name. There are all of these things. And I think that these law enforcement, these immigration enforcement agents are finding that people are not just falling over and giving up. They know their rights, and it's been working. And that's been really, really remarkable. The other thing that I think is really important to point out is that people around the country have been marching. In school districts, students have been walking out. Where I live in Southern California, the Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the nation, had massive walkouts a couple of weeks ago. In my neighborhood, Pasadena Unified School District, Pasadena reeling from the Eaton fires, immigrant advocates among students led walkouts. My own son, who's 17, participated. They walked out of their classes and they gathered in front of City Hall. They were marching, they were chanting, didn't get that much media coverage, but these students were out there full force saying, you will not take our parents away. You will not cart us away. You will not enter school grounds. You are not welcome here. We are here to stay. Immigrants are the lifeblood of the community. And I loved that. And I think it's really important for us to know that people are fighting back.
And this is exactly what I mean by life affirming, in that, we can't wait for the Democratic Party or a politician to say, these are your fellow human beings, to people who are not immigrants. Although,
on the contrary, the Democrats have, demonized immigrants and
right,
tried to outdo the Republicans in some cases.
Right. So this affirmation of humanity, again, it connects the thread of a lot of these actions, I think. The second one was, I'm talking about bringing the full force of the state against a small number of people, relatively transgender rights. Of course, that number is greater than most of us assume, but so Trump is attacking, first of all, the entire right wing is attacking trans people as the other, demonizing them, giving them a kind of heft that scapegoating in ways that are just totally detached from reality. So he has an executive care banning gender affirming care for minors. And of course, one might want to ask, whatever happened to these decisions being made between a patient and a doctor, or a family and their doctor, but that gets thrown out the window. What can people do to affirm their support for and their respect for the humanity of transgender people and their rights?
I mean, similar to immigrant rights, so much of the attacks on transgender people is based on false narratives. So, one of the things that I highlighted in this piece was media. There are some wonderful transgender-led media outlets such as Translash that are, putting out accurate information. What Trump is trying to do, again, similarly to how he's done with immigrants, is to drive a wedge between people. So, where immigrants are concerned, it's between US born versus non US born people, with the exception of people like Melania and Elon Musk. And where trans folks are concerned, the wedge is between the T in LGBTQ is being pulled out, and lesbian and gay folks, same sex people who are who identify as lesbian and gay or queer, and even queer is not something that they quite like, are being separated from trans folks um, on purpose. And so,
Hmm.
of course, there are the attacks on gender affirming care. People don't realize what gender affirming care is. Any woman who has had reconstructive surgery after breast cancer has received gender affirming care. Any man who has gotten hair plugs like Elon Musk or jawline surgery, that's gender affirming care. Uh, and so gender affirming care is something that, that should be, as you said, between the doctor and the patient. States, this is what's really important, is that states are saying, hey, we're going to give you cover. If you're a hospital that's been providing gender affirming care and you're worried about the executive order by Trump on the federal level, know that you can continue providing that care in compliance with state law. And in fact, if you don't, you'd be violating state law. And that's what Letitia James has done, this Attorney General of New York. And there are some doctors who are simply going ahead because, they care about their patients. So they're going ahead, even though there are, of course, plenty of other doctors and hospitals who've unfortunately stopped treatments midway. There's also major lawsuits by the GLMA, Health Professionals Advancing LGBTQ plus Equality. I believe they were formerly known as the Transgender Law Center, and PFLAG. So there's a big federal challenge. And so, as is the case in many of these fights, you have to have a multi-pronged response to the attacks. So there's the legal challenges, and then there's the individual challenges, then there's the narrative work. So all of that's happening. And parents are rising up, they're marching in support of their children.
And I think that is critical too, to humanizing everyone, to fighting the dehumanizing agenda that's at play here. One of the subjects, we'll run out of time pretty quickly, but one of the subjects I wanted to get to, I would say your number 3 and your number 7. And again, I don't have the title of the piece in front of me, but 7 Ways to Resist
Yeah.
Trumpism 2.0 in Yes Magazine. Number 3 is workers' rights, and number 7 is general strike.
Yeah.
These are both quite close to my heart. The Democratic Party's new chair has said he wants to position the party as the party of working people and unions, but you got to do stuff. And since the Democratic Party won't be doing stuff on the federal level about this for a long time, it's really about things you mentioned, like the American Federation of Government Employees challenging Trump's moves in court, or perhaps other forms of labor organizing that we know that across the political spectrum people like. And then your last one, general strike. I'm hearing this more and more, and I've been a believer in general strikes for a long time. It's a complex issue because current law makes it illegal in certain cases for some workers to strike, but I think at some point it's going to have to be necessary as a point to evolve to. I think it's a really good one. How many people can we educate on all of the issues you list, including workers' rights, reproductive rights, racial justice and equity, the climate, so that in a certain period of time, a year or something, we can get, maybe sooner, we can get people walking out. That'll get people's attention. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I really encourage people to check out generalstrikeus.com. It's a really interesting a set of demands that people are put together. What they, first of all, I really like their platform because it's really hard to, it's hard for the left to unite on a lot of issues. We tend to be so fractured. We tend to have purity tests for one another. I think people are realizing that we really need to start having a unifying theory of the issues that are important to us. And so, what this movement, it's been put together by a number of organizations. They have put together a lot of issues at the, as at and united a lot of issues, including labor, including immigrant rights, including trans rights. So many of the things that I write in the story. And the idea is that you would sign a strike card, which is a pledge to go on strike at a future date when enough people have signed strike cards. And there's a lot of research showing that about that in any country that have had a general strike that's been effective, you've needed only 3.5% of that nation's population to go on strike to bring everything to a screeching halt. I mean, think about that. 3.5% is a very small percentage. And so that's when the US is concerned, that's 11 million people out of 335 plus, million people. And so when 11 million people sign strike pledge cards, then this action can commence. And so, I highly recommend people sign these pledge cards. I've signed it. And then when that happens, we mobilize and we really have to be that aggressive. I know it sounds pie in the sky, it sounds idealistic, but frankly, we're at the stage now where we have to try any and every means of wresting our democracy back from the clutches of these authoritarian, fanatic fascists. None of this is exaggeration anymore, right? Like you can recall the slogans of the Revolutionary Communist Party or some of these sectarian organizations from 20 years ago who were saying, we're in a fascist USA. And you could have rolled your eyes at them back then. Unfortunately, the predictions have come true, right? Because we were already on that trajectory, and now it's more real than ever. So, yeah, I think general strike is very much warranted.
I do too, and I think that it points to the fact that two things in closing, and then I'll give you the last word. But one, that the union movement in the beginning, the labor movement, was the most interracial, the most advanced on gender issues, so many other issues in this country, going back to the 19th century. It is the crucible where new forms of justice grow. And secondly, too many times, and I understand, institutional union power has resisted this kind of thing because of the limitations of the law, but we may have to break the law nonviolently in order to change things. If not now, as the man said, when?
Exactly. I mean, frankly, Trump is breaking the laws all the time. He is literally breaking our country. He is violating the Constitution openly. Only Congress has the power to create government agencies, to mandate funding for issues, to set up Social Security. I mean, he's literally going after Social Security. And he is ignoring the law and remaking the country to be a playground for billionaires like his buddy Elon Musk. If we are going to be bound by laws of propriety, if we're going to be bound by laws that require us to comply with the fascist dismantling of our democracy, then there's no point to the law. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think any of this is an exaggeration anymore.
Well, as always, and again, my guest is Sonali Kolhatkar. I'm going to check out generalstrikeus.com, and as should you. And Sonali's piece, let me get the headline right: 7 Ways to Rise Up Against Trumpism 2.0, and yes, exclamation point, magazine. Sonali, as always, thanks for the great work, and as always, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Richard.
We depend on your support here at the 0 Hour, so please give whatever you can at any of the links you see on your screen. Thanks so much.